am recording. We are gonna kind of go. We're riffing on this one.
We're just gonna go for it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, right. I started. Hi, guys. This is Second Perspective. My name's Paul Weston. Over there is Mitchell Allen. Today, we'll be doing a QQ for you on Beasts of No Nation. We are going to be doing we're going to be doing a discussion. I'm going to stop bothering you with that
just
voice.
adopted this action movie persona for to see how that would work out.
And now, we're going to do a QQ. If I could actually do the deepest thing I can do is like, Batman. Alright. Anyways, we're going to be doing a discussion. What if you're
a serious film?
Yeah. Well, it's actually, maybe that's why we're laughing so much.
Maybe. Yeah.
If you have not seen this film already, stop this. This is sort of like a post-viewing experience. We basically sort of unpack the film and try and understand sort of certain parts that interested us, got us angry, why we didn't like it, why we did like it, so on and so forth. And I think this one might actually be fairly interesting because we just did the review, and it's the film we have easily the widest.
I was going to say.
Yeah, the grade.
Most divisive I think we've been.
Yeah, which is, I was flabbergasted that you, like, I thought you were going to be like, okay, so I ended up giving it an A-, and I'm pretty comfortable with that grade, and Mitch gave it a C.
Okay, so here's an interesting question. Okay. What grade did you think I was going to give you? And then I'll say what grade I thought.
I thought you were going to say like a B-.
Okay. I thought you were going to say like B+ tops.
Right. So he disliked it more than I thought.
We were so much closer.
Yeah, but we're not at all. I really feel like we should start hiding our grades from each other. Although you and I seem to be fairly similar.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's less fun that way. Mitch and I also found another film that a third person, Nathan, they both really liked it, and I was less enthused. So we might actually do that as a QQ just because it's my first time seeing it, and it's always fun watching people rip into me because I'm stupid. Anyways, let's get to Beasts of No Nation. And what is your biggest, like, for this discussion, what we're basically going to do is we're going to unpack sort of why I gave it an A- and why he gave it a C. We're not going to, like, try and convince each other necessarily, because then it just becomes, no, you're an idiot, and then we don't listen to each other.
But also, yeah, I mean, the point of this isn't, like we are expressing our opinions, and there's hundreds of thousands of opinions out there.
Yeah.
To say that we're, like, the definitive ones, for anyone to do that really is, like, absurd. So why do you think that way, right? Like, so that just makes more sense as a,
And, like, it's just, we found the Blue Ruin discussion to be very interesting because we learned a lot of things about the film that we hadn't seen before.
Right.
So we're going to try and see if we can't unlock some of that power. So why don't you start us and basically say, like, why was it a C and not a B-?
I mean, it's not like I have one definitive reason. Like, there's a lot of times I walk out and I'm like, oh, that's why I loved it or I hated it or whatever it was. There was a lot of stuff that just felt off to me. The film starts on, I think, one of its most interesting images, and it's that imagination TV. And it's an interesting motif to come around to. So you have this main character who's not necessarily created an environment for himself, but is fairly comfortable in a self-sufficient, pleasant, like, day-to-day environment that involves friends, involves selling off things from his house. But it's a fairly admirable environment to
could be
in.
A lot worse. Yeah, it will be a lot worse.
It could and will be a lot worse, right? So the idea that you have someone essentially constructing their world in a positive or perhaps a negative way, I thought that was interesting. But the fact that first image, that concept that they set up is sort of offhandedly referenced so much later in the movie just sort of speaks to me in terms of its inconsistency. Like, I feel like there's a specific focused perspective that the film is sort of trying to avoid, and I can't tell if it's trying to be too austere or if it's trying to plunge you, like, headfirst into its subject material. Because there were times when I felt numb and I couldn't tell if the film was trying to make me feel numb to all the violence,
Hmm.
or if it was trying to invest me emotionally. But I just hit this in between where the whole film just sort of like put me off, and there wasn't much insight for me to sort of glean from this. I just, on a general level, that's just sort of how I felt, provoked by I think the first image and onwards. But uh, I
Uh,
don't know. What did you see? What really invested you? I guess is the question, because that's where I'm having a hard time, sort
well,
of figuring out.
the first thing that I think is a little bit different is that when I first started watching it, fairly quickly I kind of saw Agu as not even necessarily just a blank slate, but someone that I can sort of like carbon copy a whole bunch of times and realize like he's not someone different or special. There are a lot of people that are going through this, and so that I could kind of almost multiply like his pain, and so that I could empathize on like this is happening to
Okay.
multiple people.
Yeah.
This is a story that's not unique, right? And that's a strange thing to say about a film, but that's something that sort of helped me kind of feel the pain of this character, or maybe not even this character, but just the situation in general, right? And so when I kind of went into the whole film with that mindset of like this is almost one of those things where for me the first image of when you see the camera watching the kids through the screenless TV,
The imagination TV.
the
Yeah.
imagination TV, I not too long afterward, I kind of had this idea or interpretation that it's like it's trying to take us out from like what we see on TV and films and documentaries, and just being like, okay, let's see if we can't get a little bit deeper into it and like not just go into like the most horrifying, the more cinematic moments, because often like with these documentaries that we see or what have you, they're like they take some of them are not very long, or some of them take the most like horrifying moments, and like sort of that's the thing, right?
Yeah.
Whereas the thing I really enjoyed about this film is it's the smaller moments. It's like him having to like, hey, can I eat some of the food with you guys? And be like, fuck you, you're not a soldier. You stand on that bench, right? Like that. I don't
Yeah.
see that in another
For
documentary,
me,
right?
those. Yeah, and so I get the idea that that would be the way to attract, like to be attracted to a film like this, or not.
Mm,
Maybe that's the wrong word, but to be entranced or
mm,
fascinated by a film like this. For
mm,
me, those moments were so few and far between. Like maybe it's perhaps just what I absorbed more, or what the film sort of thrust on me more. But more, I found myself after the first 20 minutes where they set up his home
mm,
life and then his family is either slaughtered or evacuates. And I think from that moment forward, there was just a lot of scenes of carnage and human ugliness, and especially I think when it involves kids,
mm.
like that's probably maybe it's just even more so that it just ups my ire. And as disturbing as it is, it's the kind of film where I'd hope to find a more complex insight into how these kids feel, how they deal with it, and how they react. But
Well, I
I
think
found myself
that's
I found myself just that the scenes that I felt so pervasive through the entire film were the ones where it was just bloody carnage, reciting mantras, and just general ugliness. Like I don't know, something about it didn't ring to me as being more
so
complex than
you
violence begets violence, and these children are being controlled.
well
Um,
you I mean if it's the truth, it's the truth, right? Like that's part of it is
yes,
that's the sort of thing,
but
right?
I think that's where film has the advantage over
Mm,
print media
mm,
or literature or even like a television special, is that
mm,
you can invent or at least project some sort of unique perspective onto an event that we know,
mm-hmm.
that can provide something deeper and flesh out something past the point of, into a point of abstraction or into a point of creativity. Because I feel like otherwise it just feels a little dramatically inert, and I find also a lot of the plot sort of relied on cliche for me rather than these moments that you seem to connect to.
Well, see,
Yeah.
like that's the thing is I don't know. Like some of them I can see as them as cliches, but I mean, after a certain point, like everything can be a cliche if you don't enjoy it. Like that's the problem. The issue is that like all like anyway. So we'll get into that in a little bit. But
Sure,
like
that's
the
fine.
thing that I wanted to talk about is just like that moment where Idris Elba is like, when people wouldn't stand up for you. We're trying to defend our land. Like, when I'm someone who doesn't know anything, I have no idea. Honestly, like, I'm totally an idiot. I have no idea of who's sort of actually in the right and all sort of stuff. I'm assuming the people with the UN are probably more in the right than anything. But,
Yeah,
right? But,
but
like, ultimately, when he says, like, the thing you have in your hand, that's the thing that's going to stand up for you. Like, these people murdered your family, all sorts of stuff, and I have no idea who does what, right? Like, I feel that's kind of interesting in that it's not just these kids are being controlled. Like, it's a fairly interesting thing where it's like, he's not just saying, like, I'm going to control you, I'm bigger than you, and if you don't follow me, I'm not gonna give you food, I'm gonna kill you. Right? There are certain parts of that later, but it sets up this idea that he's like, look, I can be your family. He doesn't say it directly, but like I'm your
right.
father, and I'm giving you a weapon to fight back, quite literally
But I'm not.
something.
But
But
I,
like
for
it's
me, like the facade of that
mm,
character,
mm,
which I think that's like again, it's a strong premise.
mm,
The facade of that character just dissolves so quickly for me. Right after he asks him to murder the one guy with the cleaver,
mm,
and it's also a moment that's rendered like it's it's obviously trying to ratchet up the suspense of to whether the kid will do it or whether the kid won't do it. But when the kid actually does it, there's sort of like a shock, like a slasher horror way in which like the hatchet like stands out of the guy's skull and
mm.
the guy's eyes are just sort of like carried to one side or the other, and then I mean, the scene sort of carries on with them hacking away and away and away, and
I
we're
actually
supposed to be
really
involved in that horrifying moment.
mm,
But then there's just so many of those afterwards that
mm,
it just loses its potency almost immediately for me. And I don't have that
mm.
internal tension of whether I should understand why they trust him or whether I just know that he's someone who is like if Idris Elba's character is someone who is taken up the mantle of uh, a very damaged site like controlling enterprise. So I mean, it's
I
yeah,
actually really liked that shot of when the kids are. I mean, like when I say really like, I feel a little hesitant to say that when we're
yeah,
talking about a film like this,
yeah.
but I'm just gonna assume that everyone knows what I'm talking about.
Sure.
Like, I really enjoyed that moment when they're hacking at him. You're like, this is wrong. This is terrible. I really liked it was a machete because it felt like it's not even a gun, but like he does it once he's dead. Like he has to like be like knee deep into this kind of thing. Um, and then the blood splatters onto the camera. I thought it was a really good use of that sort of mechanic because I felt very implicit on it, or like
Yeah.
I was a part of it. I didn't stop it for some reason, right? And I really that's my reaction to it. And I remember I don't have my notes in front of me right now, but I remember explicitly writing like I really enjoyed that shot because it made me feel like I'm guilty for it. I did it. I was a part of it, and it was because of the blood splatter. And that every time he hacked it, there was some blood that would splatter onto the camera, right?
So part of the interesting thing for me too is I feel like if the film had chosen like one specific strategy, like would it go more natural and like like natural lighting, sort of like subdued character drama, or would it be this like fantastical sort of like apocalypse now, like hell apocalypse scape?
Mm.
And I feel like the other thing that really bugged me with this movie is that for me it felt very visually and tonally inconsistent. Like at certain points, there's a transition from the boys' like happier life to that war, to the war that ensues, and
Mm.
it's a drop of rain. It like I'm not sure if you remember the shot, but it's like a drop of either rain or something underneath like a stone, and it feels very much like something you'd see in a Terrence Malick film or a Werner Herzog film. And I feel like the film has the opportunity to follow that traction and then it sort of turns into another type of film. So then, there's the sequences of them murdering people in the cities is almost like not necessarily as exploitative as it's going to sound when I say this, but almost like a music video. Like it's cut up in a way that's more sensory rather than specific, or we're seeing like specific images or specific intentions. And I just feel like there's a lot of different paths that it tries to follow, and a lot of it feels inconsistent and sort of chaotic to me.
Well, the thing that interested me was the fact that like they set up this, and I guess the reason why I wasn't so bothered by the facade or like sort of the mythical aspect of Elba's character being kind of the curtain's been dropped on him so quickly, is that because they very quickly show that he's taking orders from somebody else, that he's not like even the highest, strongest person,
yeah.
right? And like it's that even the person that they are being controlled by is also being controlled by somebody else, right?
Yeah.
And like that, I felt like was even more interesting, and it added. And I felt like what this story did is that it didn't always necessarily talk about how Agu's character is affected by something, or like he is affected directly by something, but it's how different moments, like how Idris Elba's character is affected by, or is like being manipulated by this character, that in a way affects Agu. And the whole idea of just like he's just this little cog in a machine, and even the thing that he thinks is like the God is not even God, right? And it's just like how you get more and more insights on
But I guess
Agu, even when he's not even necessarily being
yeah.
there.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess on one hand, I think also part of it is maybe the film didn't communicate to me enough how Agu sees him as a god. Like I only understood that on an intellectual level, where if you understand that someone's father has just died, and Idris Elba's character says like I'm your new father, then of course like he's going to revere him. But I guess just immediately the film doesn't like present me with the perspective of that kid as well as it could, and it has the opportunity to.
What do
It
you
actually
mean?
has a narration device in there where it could I think supply information or supply a perspective that Agu has about Commandant and the way that he's controlling people, but it usually uses that narration to focus on like either a cliche idea that I think later on in the film it starts talking about like how like the violence keeps building and building and it's just hell and I don't want to deal with this anymore, or it talks about like that brief aside to Imagination TV, and it has I think the potential to dig deeper into that insight, but it doesn't use the devices it already seems to present in, for me, the most effective way to communicate that.
I'm almost curious that like part of
It's possible I have a bias against narration in general because I just find it such a crutch for screenwriting and for filmmaking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it just seems like a lot of your issues are not even necessarily like totally the execution, like just on a purely like cinematic and drawing level. I don't think this is any worse than C+. I really don't. You can like go, it's not for you or whatever, but I feel like a lot of what your disagreements come from, or the things that you have issue with, or just thematic choices that the person has made, and that this is a film that you wish focused on something else. And like one of the things that they teach us when we talk to actors and stuff like that, at least that I was taught, is that like sometimes we get so focused on what we want, we're not seeing what the actors are giving us. And I wonder if like it sounds like when you're talking to me and like you're saying all these things, you're like the film should have done this or the film should have done that.
No, that's
right.
Not. That's I'm just saying why I believe that the film doesn't work for me. But I'm not saying the film should be one way or should be the other. I'm just trying to understand why I am having the reaction I'm having. For me, I don't see enough specifically from our main characters. I mean, for me, the most character work done in this movie is with Idris Elba's character, who is a good character, and Idris Elba is an excellent, confident performer who I feel is mature
The
enough
next
to.
Bond? No, just kidding.
I mean, it also doesn't sound like it. He sounds pretty off about the idea in general. But he's anyway. Just to go back to it, I mean, he's so confident and such a, I think, consummate performer that he's able to imbue those characters with a sense of like invisible backstory, with a purpose and a real complexity that I think, as good as these kid actors are, and they are not bad, they're very strong.
Yeah.
I just, unless you have the strongest writing in the world, it's hard for me to see past them as carbon copies of each other. And I know that a lot of war films do this, that they have carbon copies of each other. And the point is that we're making carbon copies to, put forward the violent impulses that we are doing. But war films have also, I think, beforehand prevented more complex characters or soldiers that have something more specific to latch onto. Like I, throughout the most of the film, couldn't latch onto him as anything other as a West African boy from a damaged community who becomes a soldier. Like beyond that, there was nothing about him that I could find specifically to hook on to as a character. And that troubles me just as a narrative, as a film, and as an experiential film like that, is just, what is the insight in getting into these people?
Well, and that's sort of where I think that's basically where the road divides, right? Because
sure,
to me, it was much more about just the experiences that he went through, right? Like, it's really interesting for me in the film. Like, one of his sort of redeeming moments in the film is when he actually shoots somebody in the head who gets raped, right? And it's just sort of right. It's like, to get to the point where the character actually has to do something that gross and that evil, or on its own sort of cruel, and that is one of those things where all of a sudden that is seen as sort of a redeeming aspect of the character or something like that. That's interesting to me, so that you can get to a state like that, right, with the character. And it's, I thought kicking the baby was a little bit much. Right?
Yeah,
that
I mean,
was
there's just like that. So that shot. Now that you reminded me of that specific moment, that shot just bugs me because it's sort of like a cavalcade of horrors after scenes and scenes of a cavalcade of horrors, and then followed by a number of other things. Like, it just feels repetitive to me, and I'm not seeing the commentary that's there. So when you're kicking the baby, you're just kicking the baby, which is on a list. Now it's just like a list of what can we do to make this more upsetting, right?
Well,
that's
what it seems to me. The one thing that we can say is that Agu doesn't. Does he partake? Yeah, he does, doesn't he?
What do you mean?
Kicking the baby. I mean, it's not like a baby, but it's
I'm pretty sure he's either implicit or he may not be the main one doing it, but he's. He's also implicit in a lot of the violence, so it's not like.
I'm also pretty sure that that's the first time that we see him go on a rampage, fuck this, fuck you, fuck that, one of those kind of things where he just kind of does sort of horrible things just to do it, where he has become, sort of like Stryker. I'm pretty sure that's what the whole one shot is for. Is that because we have seen him hack somebody, right? But we hadn't seen him go into that sort of mindless, let's just screw everything, punch everything, that sort of violence, right? And then even at the end of it, he kind of goes wait a second, right? And part of it with the children is it's hard to get them to be sort of emotionally complex through dialogue because they're fucking children, right? The thing you have to do is show it through visual moments or through their interactions with different characters.
Of course, right, and I agree with you. I think it should be explicated that way.
And I think
I didn't see that.
I feel like I did, which is really interesting, right?
Okay.
Because you and I are usually pretty similar on a lot of things, a lot of films. So, it's already 25 minutes. I'm surprised that we've talked this already.
I guess. Wow.
But why don't we talk about? There's two things I want to talk about. We'll see if we get to both of them. But
sure.
One thing that sort of links to what we're talking about now is, how do you feel about that scene where Idris Elba basically sexually abuses Agu?
I mean, beyond the immediate sensory reaction of gross.
I'm talking on. I'm talking to
Yeah, no,
filmmaker
no, no.
Mitch.
Of course, that's what I said.
Yeah.
Beyond, because
Mm,
that's like
mm,
unfortunately a layer of coding that
mm,
it was hard to get rid of in general in this movie for me. But
mm,
let's to look deeper at that. I think the fact that uh, Idris Elba's Commandant is trying um, to appeal to Agu's character in that entire scene, and only really betrays him in its very final moments.
mm,
That's an interesting
mm,
scene, and it's decently constructed.
mm,
But at the same time, as soon as I see him walk in the door, and I know he's been called specifically for that,
mm,
and perhaps this is unfortunately because I've watched a lot of 60 Minutes pieces on either child soldiers, or I've seen
mm,
similar films on similar conflicts. It seems more inevitable,
mm.
and then once it gets to that moment, I don't know, it doesn't feel like it feels like it inflicts a violent act on a character, but it doesn't supply Agu with anything concrete as a character trait. It's just another way that we see him experience pain. So I mean, it's not that it's poorly constructed, that scene in particular. It's just I just fail to see why. That's maybe the big question for
I
me.
honestly, I think it's because because you're unable, unwilling, don't see it, whatever. Of like this is like one of those things where we're not just watching a group, but we're watching many children.
Yes, yes.
That is sort of the whole point. Is that it's like Agu's not the only one, right? And like that is what the whole experience is for. And like if you've seen like how many films have you seen about children soldiers? Because I've seen two, and it's been years. How many have
Okay.
you seen?
I mean, have I? Am I? And this is
Mm,
also. I don't want to come off like I'm sounding like sounding like I'm an authority on this,
mm.
because I'm not.
Yeah,
I'm not an authority on the historical context. I'm not an authority on the filmmaking genre. But I've seen. I would say, feature film wise, I've probably seen about 4 to 5
mm,
at least,
mm,
around the same concepts.
mm,
And in terms of like news footage and documentary footage, I can't quantify that, but I've
mm,
seen enough to know the
mm,
basics
mm,
of those emotional turmoils and those
mm,
specific like social contexts.
mm,
So that's maybe I. So we talked about this earlier.
mm,
If I had not seen any of this, if I was completely blankly unaware of this movie, would I have the same reaction?
mm,
The truth is, I'm not sure.
mm.
The truth is, I might have
Honestly,
actually really found this film much more powerful and affecting. I
I
don't know.
honestly think you would have. My gut reaction would be it's like if no one's ever seen an action film ever before,
Right.
I feel like they'd see almost any action film and be like, oh wow, that's pretty cool, right? And like I've seen less, and I also just think the sort of details that this film had, I enjoyed. I thought like I'm not always a huge fan of like kids acting,
Mhm.
um, just because it's hard for me to sort of take in. But like this is probably my favorite children acting.
Really?
I don't watch too many. Like
Okay.
what's one that I like that is sort of noted for better.
I mean, like the examples escape me now,
Hmm.
but I can
But
think of
this is a high one. This is like I
it's
really
no,
enjoyed it.
it's in like, especially on children who
Hmm.
feel
Okay,
real.
here's one.
Yeah.
I saw Room recently. I
Yes.
enjoyed this kid's acting. I forget his actor's name. I'm so sorry, but he was acting over the boy in Room.
Jacob Tremblay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I thought the boy in the room in Room was good, right?
Yeah.
But
I would agree.
right, and so I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, on it. Yeah. I will agree
Mm,
also that just on a general performance level,
mm,
there aren't any bad performers, and there are some great ones.
mm.
So it's not like
But it's a
there's
C.
no. I'm just saying it's okay. So it's probably edging closer to a C plus, but it won't go above that for me because I fail to see anything tonally or like anything remarkable in the way that its narrative is constructed, in the way that it provides a tone for the movie. Okay, here's another scene that I really pissed me off in a way, and then also I learned another reason that it pissed me off.
It's really
So
interesting.
there's
I
one
don't see
scene.
pissed
It's one of
off
the
though.
many sequences where they head into battle.
Hmm.
And so Agu and the rest of the group goes on, and before this, Agu is given a drug
Hmm.
that's implanted into his
Like a cut.
into a cut on his head, and the world is given a color treatment that's pinkish.
Hmm.
And initially, even like without knowing the background of that scene or anything like that, I just felt like it was a stylistic choice that I couldn't tell was inflicted by the drug or was inflicted by the fact that we needed to see like a specific color tone more than the others. And I just didn't understand that choice and what it had to do with, you know, reflecting the tone of the film or elevating it from what we'd already seen before.
Hmm.
So I found it confusing, just in terms of like a narrative or a visual choice. And then I learned that sequence is a subject of a lot of controversy. I don't know if you
I
um,
haven't, no.
read about this at all, but so Fukunaga has been accused of appropriating these images or this color palette specifically from an Irish artist who did a lot of photography around. I believe it actually might have been either West African or sorry, it's Soldiers in the Democratic Republic of Congo, which I'm not sure is in the same region or not, but the images are almost like exactly the same. So he's not only borrowing the aesthetic, he's almost copying
Exactly
it,
the same how? Like composition and everything?
compositionally, subject matter, like very much the same. And it's not necessarily that this is like, oh, a critic picked this up and that was it. The artist has actually made a statement that Fukunaga called on him and said, "Hi, we're really interested in your work. Do you want to just talk to me about it?" And they had a very brief, like hour-long discussion. And then months and months later, the film arrived, and Fukunaga made no attempts to highlight the fact that the scene was inspired by anything or whatever. And it was up to Moss to really sort of like out it himself. So,
well,
yeah, I don't know if I mean, it's either it's a separate issue or it's just the fact that perhaps it's a director who's co-opting his own influence on something without.
Okay, you know what? I'm gonna step in here
Yeah.
for like this is really interesting. I'm glad that we kind of have a little bit of a push give. The first of all, I enjoyed it. On an instinctual level. I didn't really care. I think it was supposed to be like, is it supposed to be drugs? Is it supposed to be his reaction? Is it just sort of in a culmination, like does he's only seen red kind of thing? I thought it was perfectly fine. And clearly, two artists think it's fine because they used it. And like this is what I'm talking about. This is like it's a progression of things, right? First, he goes on this like he finally he's indoctrinated, then he actually kills somebody, and then he goes on like this rampage. Then all he sees is this kind of thing, and like it's that progression. That is why I like this film. So this has no problem for me. Second of all, man, it's just Quentin Tarantino. Nobody would give a shit if he stole it because. There's so many artists that are like, good artists borrow, great artists steal.
Yes.
And it's just sort of like, I'm sick and tired. The world needs to pick one. It either needs to like, you know what, no, artists can't steal, which then we're not going to make anything good. Or you go, you know what, artists steal. And you know what, yeah, try and say like, hey, by the way, I was inspired by this, or I think through this. Honestly, I think if you steal it and make it better, then honestly, that's probably fine. Because there's nothing really that original left. We're a fucking podcast on YouTube. We're not original, but we're still gonna do it.
Of course.
And it's just
but I think the responsibility still lays. Like I don't think Tarantino would make a film and then when someone goes, I feel like the sequence is borrowed from this, he would ignore it or he wouldn't bring it up. In fact, he probably starts many of those discussions with, oh, this film was like a menagerie of this one and this one and this one and this one and this one, and you should watch all these films, and I love all these films watching.
Yeah,
and that was part of that experience, right? This one I feel like borrows a perspective that I don't know if it's his. Like it just feels like a sort of like a borrowed visual sequence, it's sort of rendered as like a directorial choice or an independently directorial choice where it's so I don't know, it's hard to know whether that's stealing or whether it's
I think it's all stealing.
Homage.
But like the thing is like my only issue with that whole sort of situation is that like I feel like he should have said like either ask the guy or be like, look, you either don't ask and just take it and
Right.
like
Right.
ask beg for
Yeah, I
forgiveness
guess I
later,
see. Right.
or you ask and you try and make it better, right? And it's just like me as person, like before anyone gets any ideas. Mitch probably knows me like really well. I can't steal shit. I feel too bad. I'm it hurts and all that sort of stuff. I'm run by guilt, but I also don't like. I mean, Shakespeare stole everything, right? He just did it better, and I have no problem
But
with
then
people.
you have to do it better. You have
And-
to. Right. It's a matter of borrowing or expanding upon.
And you know what? Maybe he tried and he didn't do it properly. And like this is a guy that has done so many neat things, and I guarantee you right now, as we speak, there's somebody filming that something looks like True Detective. I promise you.
For sure.
Right.
For
so
sure.
it's so
But
I
is it
feel
shot for shot the same? Is it
I really
borrowed
want to see
the
these
exact
shots.
same color palette? That's what I'm saying. It's
Like, do
very.
you have the visual evidence or like the?
Yeah, I do. I can
Interesting.
send you right after this to actually show you.
Okay, so we'll take a look at it. We'll actually put it in the video below, or in the comments below, or whatever.
Sure.
So that people can see it as well. I haven't seen it yet, so like I'm not saying he's in the right or wrong. I just think people need to pick one with the whole stealing thing.
No, of course.
But this is definitely one of our longer videos, aside from that hour and a half long interstellar discussion. But never again. Do you have any parting thoughts before we let this go?
Yeah.
Other
pretty
than
clear what
I'm right, you're wrong. That's good.
It's pretty clear what I thought. So I mean, I won't be an authority on whether you watch this or not, and something about this film just really wrapped me in a not a rage, but just a confusing, antagonistic feeling towards it, and just something about it just really rubbed me the wrong way. So if you wanted to watch another film, so let me offer a positive alternative. If you wanted to watch another film about a similar experience with, for me, a strong character, a strong narrative, and a very specific visual perspective and cultural perspective, I recommend the film Rebelle. It's a Canadian film. It's also titled War Witch, I think, in the U.S., and maybe if you find a version with that name. But I highly recommend the film, and it's another perspective on this issue. So I'll just leave it with that rather than repeating my distaste, because it's better to just sort of,
So, okay, our parting thoughts, do this in like 15, 20 seconds so we don't repeat ourselves too much.
That's fine.
But, okay, I liked it, fine, whatever. Do you think you actually dislike it because of taste or because of actual mechanical issues of the film? And you don't have to expand on it.
Okay. So, truthfully, I can't answer definitively. I know that you see it as taste. I will admit,
I think there's definitely certain things wrong
I think
mechanically with this
there's
film.
some bits of it are
but
taste.
I don't think it's a C film. Like that's in my mind, that's crazy. Which I'm
so
crazy in some people's minds.
It's a taste thing, and I think there are some mechanics that bother me. There are quite a few, but they don't actively bother me as much as I thought. So I'm going to upgrade it to a C plus.
Nope, too late. You're C. You're a C.
I'm going to upgrade it to a C plus, but it's just on that edge, and maybe it is taste, and maybe it's mechanics, but that's I don't know. That's where I land on it.
All right, guys. We just spent 40 minutes trying to but unpack things, and you know what? We got nowhere. That's okay.
Do we get anywhere, Paul?
No,
we never get anywhere.
No, not really, but it's fun. All right, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed the discussion. Mitch and I are trying to find ways to sort of find even if the film is not necessarily deep, find a way to unpack things and learn more, because this is like these discussions is to are for the people that are more film oriented and really want to learn more about film, and not only that, but just actually be able to enjoy analyzing film a little bit more. So hopefully that's doing it for you guys, and if you ever have any questions or thoughts or anything like that, on how to do these discussions or what you want to see, let us know, and soon we'll see if we can't include it. Anyways, I'm Paul Weston. This is Second Perspective. Over there, Mitchell Allen, and we'll see you guys next time. But goodbye,
Bye,
Internet.
internet.